Hey there trainers, and welcome to the Pokemon Analysis videos. I'm Phemeto, and co-hosting the series with me is Jin Furai. While prepping for the Pokemon VGC tournaments, we've been actively discussing the meta and team building, so we're going to be bringing to you some of the insights into the meta for those of you unaware of what to look out for. Chances are, if you're already competing, this information is probably not too useful for you, but for people trying to learn and get better at the doubles format, we're here to bring you all the ins and outs of the metagame. So we're going to start with a series of cores that are extremely popular in the current metagame, their strengths, their weaknesses, and how to deal with them. So let's break this down and begin. Today we're going to start with the Whale and the Worm, Dozo and Tatsugiri. It's a very flexible duo that seemingly is going to be dominant force in the metagame for most of the 2023. If you are preparing for the San Diego tournament or just ladder in general, you're going to want to have a strong answer to this combination of Pokemon. There are a few core conceptual reasons why Dondozo and Tatsugiri are so strong in the meta, and here they are broken down into each of the components so we can analyze it. First off, Commander. This ability has got to be one of the best in all of Generation 9, hands down. While Tatsugiri and Dondozo are both out on the field, Tatsu goes physically inside Dondozo, and then the Dondozo gains +2 to all stats. That's double all stats. Dondozo's base stats are already insanely bulky, and when it gains its additional +2 levels to both defense and special defense, it becomes an absolute tank capable of outpacing most 2v1 matchups, which is where you're going to be anyway. Unaware. This is Dondozo's ability. Sword Stance, Nasty Plot, no problem. Dondozo can ignore all other setup Pokemon that are strong in the current meta, and it allows it to wall many sweepers, such as Garchomp and Annihilate. Order Up. A signature move for Dondozo that allows it to boost its stats based off the color of Tatsugiri that's in Dondozo's mouth. This effectively starts your snowball effect that ramps up each turn it is used. Typically, most people are going to be running Orange Tatsugiri, which boosts its attack every time Order Up is used. Even if an opponent protects from that attack, you still get the attack boost. Since most players are running the attack boost variation at the moment, it is pretty easy to predict. However, with the meta being so new, it is possible that other colors start seeing more usage, such as yellow, to get more speed on Dondozo. Here's your example EV and moves for Dondozo and Tatsugiri. Let's talk about Dondozo. So with +2 in most of his stats, whatever way you want to build Dondozo will pretty much fit. It's all about your playstyle and what you think you're going to be facing in your matchups. You can invest more into bulk to survive some one-off matchups, or invest more into speed to have some control over other mons and maybe outpace the mirror match. Now, Dondozo's move pool is rather lacking, so you don't have too many options. However, what Dondozo has access to still gives it a very versatile kit. Earthquake should always be on there so you have a spread move to target all your opponents. Even without stab, +2 Earthquake still hits very well into most of the current metagame Pokemon. Order Up is great, but non-stab Dragon isn't exactly the strongest thing around. However, its true design is meant to be used as the snowball tool. Each turn just increases your damage throughput more and more. If they keep protecting, eventually it's just going to get out of control. It still works as a very good damaging skill, as there's a lot of dragons in the current meta. However, Terra Blast is still another great option for damaging versus single targets, as it allows you to play with basically any kind of stab move you want, and then that again is very catered to what kind of playstyle you want, and it's against whatever you think you're going to match up. You can do Terra Steel, you can do Terra Grass, whatever you need coverage for, you can actually get it. And Wave Crash will mostly one-hit KO anything that doesn't resist it, and Wave Crash is going to be your best stab move. So if you're going to opt for that, I would recommend doing Protect as well to heal off some of the HP loss with Recoil with that and Leftovers. For your defensive calls, it's actually your choice between Substitute, Protect, or even both. Substitute is great for Dondozo because this thing is so bulky that sometimes you'll be able to eat 2 hits before the thing breaks, and that's just gravy because then you can just heal it off with Leftovers. Especially if you're alternating with Protect too, this thing can wall out and stall out so many Pokemon. Taking a look at Tatsugiri right now, the best option for Tatsugiri is either move first and hopefully win the 1v1 after your Dozo gets killed, or you return fire by utilizing a Focus Sash as a revenge killer. Tatsugiri's move pool is also extremely limiting, not letting it get much in the way of coverage moves unfortunately, so you don't have that many options. If you're feeling really snarky, you could run Mirror Coat or Revenge, but I do not recommend that. So why is this pair a dominant part of the metagame? So the duo, when you look at them and their combined abilities, really speak volumes as to why they impact the current meta. And when you add the ability to change Terra types to cover its counters, Dondozo becomes one of the strongest available Pokemon hands down. There's a reason why the entire meta is actually revolving around these guys. Even if you aren't using them on your team, you are required to have an answer to them. It's not always easy to counter them in the first place either. Dondozo can Terra Steel to help remove Clear Smog from hitting it, Ground to increase Earthquake damage, Grass to become Spore immune and Rage Powder immune, or flying to help versus other Dondozo mirrors or get away from earthquakes. Because a +2 Dozo with over 300 attack is still one of the hardest hitting things around, not requiring any setup, and it can safely switch into a lot of Pokemon thanks to water typing being so strong, as well as offer insane bulk with base 150 HP and 115 defense, which gets doubled instantly. So this thing is it's a safe play pretty much all the time. There's not very many things that you can throw in and it's going to die to immediately. And Dozo is a sweeper, so if you find a way to remove any of their Pokemon that can stop Dozo, that's basically it. You can pretty much sweep up the game from there. And that's where the success for Dondozo comes in. Now, every core has its weaknesses, and there are some specific ones that do hit this duo. First is predictability. Dondozo and Tatsugiri don't have the most robust move pool, so its actual options are very limited, and as such, it'll make it very easy to predict what moves it'll be carrying and what you can throw into it. While it is still scary strong, swapping into Dondozo is pretty safe since it doesn't really hold any surprises. So bulky mons who can resist water or ground can swap it and take hits from Dondozo no problem. Now the second big weakness to these guys is stat control. You can shut down this core very effectively since it uses 2 Pokemon to set it up, and all it takes is 1 stat reduced to cripple this entire thing, and basically will leave you or your opponent with just Dondozo, which is just effectively 1 Pokemon. And if you can actually cripple Dondozo's attack back to his base values, it allows you to set up however you want. There's tons of ways to cripple his stats in the current meta, and then you're just basically on a 2v1. So here's how to beat this core. The easiest way to deal with Dondozo is to control its stats, since that would negate the whole Tatsugiri commander and just leave them with the 1 Pokemon on the field. So, stat removal. Clear Smog and Haze are extremely popular in the meta right now, specifically to counter Dondozo, and it's available on a large variety of threats such as Prankster Murkrow, which shuts down the duo instantly with pretty much out any counterplay, Haze Vaporeon and Gengar, which both can take a hit from Dondozo and proceed to Haze, granted Gengar should have Focus Sash. Clear Smog is also available on Armarouge, Torkoal, Gastrodon, and Amoonguss, all of whom can take a beating from Dondozo, although Armarouge and Torkoal will need to use their Terra to go into their respective grass or water types to be safe, but in a Trick Room they do outspeed Dondozo. So if your opponent shows in Dondozo in their preview, you need to make sure your stat removal Pokemon is kept alive just in case they have it. Amoonguss is the general go-to answer to Dondozo, as you have the option to sleep it with Spore or Clear Smog it if it's not Steel. Either way, it shuts down Dondozo relatively safely because Amoonguss can take hits from Dondozo all day. Now, stat control kind of goes in with this whole stat removal thing. Dondozo is strong, but you can still easily cripple it with things like Grimmsnarl and an Intimidate Pokemon like Arcanine or Gyarados. Practically no one runs Clear Amulet Dondozo, so you can parting shot with Grimmsnarl after you set up a Reflect, and swap into Arcanine, which completely dumps Dondozo's attacks and removes it as a threat, and Arcanine can take a few Earthquakes or Wave Crash after the -2 and a Reflect, no problem. And if you get the Will-O-Wisp off, you're done. Gyarados completely laughs at Dondozo as it really doesn't have a way to damage Gyarados, and then you could just begin to chip away with it with your Mons. Charm is another move that's seeing a lot more use as it has a -2 attack and it resets Dondozo's attack back to base values, making it much less of a threat. Lilligant is a good user for this because it's also extremely fast with Torkoal, who can also clear Smog in case that doesn't work out. And don't be afraid to use Arcanine, I'm just saying, Grimmsnarl Arcanine go into him pretty hard. Now, some Pokemon can also safely dispatch Dondozo by themselves, given the opportunity. Meowscarada, which is very popular right now, can safely swap into Dondozo and threaten it with Flower Trick, since the guaranteed crit bypasses his defense boost. Terra Steel Dozo is not afraid of this though, so again, you do need to be careful when using Meowscarada to counter Dondozo. If the opponent already used their Terra, or their Dondozo isn't Terra Steel, you're pretty much safe though. Dondozo Mirror is also a very common matchup, since both of them have Unaware. You negate the stat increases from Tatsugiri's commander, which does effectively give you a second Pokemon to use against theirs, and you're back to that 2v1 matchup. Dondozo Mirror also lets you set up Substitute and snowball your own Dondozo through Order Up, while you're getting in extra damage to your second Mon, and hopefully having Protect on it to keep it alive. Unaware Skeledirge can also handle Dondozo in the right situation. If you can Terra out of fire typing, Skeledirge can chip away at Dondozo with Will-O-Wisp and Torch Song if they have Terra Steel, which is a very common Dondozo setup. So closing thoughts, Tatsugiri and Dondozo currently a very strong powerhouse in the present metagame, and while there are a lot of things that can check and counter this combo, you do have to make sure that all your teams have some form of counter to this. It's up to the player to protect those Pokemon as well. If you let them die, then you're setting yourself up for failure. This is where most teams fall to Dondozo. Sure, they have a counter, but they keep their Murkrow out, or they keep their Amoonguss out, and they take too many hits, and then the Dondozo can just sweep them. Just be very wary when they show their Dondozo in their preview and play smart. That's going to be it for us though. I'll see you guys next time in this next Pokemon analysis video.